Fancy Bear is a Russian cyber espionage group. American cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike has stated with a medium level of confidence that it is associated with the Russian military intelligence agency GRU. Does that mean it's actually true? Well, go look at who runs CrowdStrike and take that with a grain of salt, right? But this is what they're saying in the American Western media about Fancy Bear. Fancy Bear is the hacking group responsible for the breach of John Podesta's Gmail account in 2016. The hackers used a targeted phishing attack, spear phishing. Podesta was tricked into clicking a malicious link in an email that led to a fake Google login page where he unwittingly entered his credentials, giving the hackers access to his account. The stolen emails were subsequently published by Wikileaks in the months leading up to the 2016 US presidential election, creating a dominant storyline during the campaign. US intelligence agencies concluded that the operation was part of a broader Russian effort to interfere with the election, damage the Clinton campaign, and help Donald Trump win. This idea that Podesta fell for a phishing attack on his computer is really hard for me to believe. Hypothetically speaking, let's say that though it is referred to as a conspiracy theory, Pizzagate and QAnon is real, just for the sake of this hypothetical discussion. If it's real, there is a child trafficking ring existing, doing something unfathomably evil that would never be intentionally made public. And if you are the entities controlling this thing, organizing it, all of that, and you've been doing it for decades, centuries, before technology even existed, and you have unlimited resources, is it logical to assume that an organization like this would be at the forefront of technology, and they would have their own hackers, they would have their own cybersecurity experts involved and on the staff, as it were, so that anytime anyone involved in it was doing things on the internet and they came across something they weren't sure about, they would immediately send a message to this person and say, hey, I have this thing going on my computer. Should I do this? I mean, thinking of it in terms of where technology is now, an organization like this might even have its own separate internet that it uses to communicate. Maybe that's existing on the quote-unquote dark web. Maybe it's some kind of onion layer to the internet that we're not even aware of. They might even have a whole different browser from Tor that they don't even make public. You know what I mean? They could have a communication system organizing all of this that would never even use the public internet. And if what these conspiracy theorists say is true and Podesta and his brother are involved in it, I find it highly unlikely, number one, that they would be having open discussions about it on Gmail, on the public internet, and number two, that they would actually be stupid enough to be logged into their email, actually reading messages, and see one that is alleging to be from Google saying, hey, you need to re-enter your credentials on this page. And they get hacked from that. It's like rudimentary Internet 101 understanding that I'm already logged in. Why would I need to log in again? Why would they send me an email in my logged in account that I need to re-log in? And I can hear people saying to themselves right now, oh, well, I know dumb boomers who don't understand technology. They would do something like this. The Podestas are old. And I don't think you can use your parents or anybody else you know that age who doesn't fully understand technology and might be scammed in this way in the context of these people. and the organization that they would be involved in if this is what is going on. And this is the crux of the whole thing, this idea that Podesta somehow was scammed into giving away his credentials, then oops, all these emails leak. And of course, it's instantaneously linked to Russia and that influence that has been a narrative going on for as long as Donald Trump has been in the news in terms of the presidency of the United States, right? They've been constantly linking him to Russia. And that relates to all of this stuff, QAnon, Pizzagate. It's this misinformation idea about how even foreign countries that want to destabilize the United States are engaging in it as well. This is one of the many reasons why we need to get a handle on what's allowed on the internet. In other words, at the same time it's being made obvious that there's a hate speech, quote unquote, problem, it's also being made obvious that, hey, we have this problem of foreign countries using the same strategies, amplifying the disinformation on the internet as a part of their overall strategy to weaken the United States or any other country that they do this to. But the entire Pizzagate narrative hinges on this. And I'm just trying to open your mind with all of the Epstein stuff being put front and center by a lot of people to the possibility that all of this was coordinated from the beginning. It was intentionally released, and they just said that Podesta fell for a phishing scam. That's how they justified these emails leaking. And yeah, if you read through the emails, there's all kinds of strange phrases and words being used in contexts that don't make any sense. And that would be a part of it, right? Because this is the part that the quote unquote conspiracy theorists use to prove their case. So you have to have some information in there that proves the narrative, or else it doesn't work. People have to really believe what they're saying for them to be effective tools that can later be used as evidence for why we need censorship. And indeed, as a part of Pizzagate, they had the Welch character go into Comet Pizza and fire a couple shots. And then after he's released from jail, he's coincidentally killed by a police officer in a traffic stop, loose end tied up. But then right after that happened in 2016, the news says, oh, look, this person was radicalized by all this information and disinformation on the internet and was actually going to do harm to people potentially. Like, we really got to get a handle on this. And then you see it all leads from one thing into the next, where Pizzagate goes to QAnon, and then QAnon goes to the alleged insurrection at the United States Capitol. And then that just feeds right into what they're doing now, positioning Donald Trump as a dictator. Now, it's difficult because when I say, what if they did this intentionally? The impulse is to think that everything is just scripted very neatly and none of it is quote unquote real in that sense. But that is not a nuanced enough view of the situation. Because when you dig a little deeper into these characters, when you look at the art that the Podestas were in possession of, there's only a few ways to explain that. Either they collected that art as a part of this narrative that they wanted to create, and those pictures were intentionally left up on Instagram to be found as a part of this, or that is really their art collection and they are sort of pawns that intentionally get sacrificed to the public, or at least the portion of the public that comes to believe these conspiracy theory narratives. If you talk to somebody who is an adherent to QAnon, they would view the Podestas as one of the most evil families in existence because of what they've been shown. I don't know which one it is. I'm just saying I think it's highly unlikely that these emails were accidentally leaked by Podesta. That seems very unlikely to me. Again, think about this organization and what it would be if it's real. If it's real, there's no way this guy is going to accidentally give his Google credentials away. There's just no way. If you're involved in something like that, you would be so careful on the internet And that leads me to the emails themselves, where nothing is directly disclosed. There's a lot of questionable stuff there, but then it's like, well, why would they let Wikileaks publish the emails? Where would the repercussions for that be? And then immediately it's, oh, well, they put Julian Assange in jail and then trapped him in an embassy, essentially. But then when you look at how everything was wrapped up, Assange gets out of jail. He is allowed to go back to Australia, and it's time served. Meaning, some of these people who are involved in this, as a part of the deals they make, I think they just have to go with whatever they're told to do. Sort of like it is in the mafia, right? Where it's this code, you don't snitch no matter what. And that includes doing a prison sentence for something you didn't even do. You just take one for the organization. And you're rewarded for that, right? You're a made man and your family's taken care of. And no matter what happens to you, for your loyalty, you are taken care of. And that could mean a bunch of different things, at least what these people are told by whatever is orchestrating this at the highest level. Those entities might tell these people they're going to get all kinds of special, amazing things that they're never intending to give them. And, they fall for it and sell their souls to it. And as a part of that, I'm saying they go to jail for 5 years like Assange did. That's just part of what you do. Now, is it possible that he was never in jail? He was just lounging somewhere and they just told us he was there and it wasn't real in any way? Yeah, sure, that's possible. But I think there's a realistic aspect to all of this that people want to gloss over because it's not easy. It's much easier to just say, oh, everything's fake. None of that's real. Yeah, that was all acting. But no, that's not how the real world works. Okay? For these things to be believable, there needs to be actual paper trails. There needs to be actual regular people who interact with all of these things and reinforce the reality of the illusion. WikiLeaks has done a lot to weaken the credibility of the United States of America and just the current structure of the world in general, and that's a very convenient development in the context of a completely new system being built all around us, right? Of course you want that to happen. You want the traditional idea of the nation state to become obsolete as a concept. And that's why so many young people are taught now that nation state, as we know it in the Western part of the world, equates to colonizer. They want this bad stigma associated with the nation states as they currently exist and how they came into being. You see how they're chipping away at the very foundation of what these entities are? I mean, that's what it is. It's an entity, right? It's just lines on a map. It's not real, but it's made real by all of us believing in it. And so in the mind, they are beginning to chip away at that idea with concepts like, oh, it's the colonizers. This whole system is colonization. It should not be in existence. And then you have all these young people with all their energy protesting for things along these lines, and it builds the necessary momentum, generationally speaking, for the fourth industrial revolution, for this new system to come into being that kind of gets away from all of that. So that's at least one possibility for why WikiLeaks came into existence in the first place, and one of their assets, Julian Assange, was said to be heading it, who himself was a hacker. And they create this whole backstory for him along those lines, and they sell you this story about how, hey, this is the person who did the right thing and started leaking all of these secrets. And then you have part of the people who think he's a hero, and you have the other part who think he's a traitor. And it's the same as every other narrative, right? People take sides, and there's no cohesive understanding because the sides are so polarized. Now, as for why they would actually do this, why would you make it public knowledge that this thing is even going on, right? Why would you put it into the collective mind, even if it's done through the lens of crazy conspiracy theorists that don't know anything and need to be removed from the internet, even if that's the end goal for mass censorship? Why would you even make people aware of this? It's very dangerous, right? I mean, there's all kinds of angles you could go with. One of them relates to what I was just talking about, where putting this narrative out there really puts people in a dark state of mind where everything they believed was true about the world no longer is true. And that's kind of doing the same chipping away at the old ways and allowing for the creation of new philosophies, which might include some type of legalization under a new term like minor attracted persons for the act of pedophilia. Maybe that's part of the end game here. Well, you make it public in a certain way, so you make it acceptable that it exists in some subconscious way, and then you eventually fuse it with the broadening LGBTQ stuff in the same way that the transgender thing has been allowed into that. Now you allow minor attracted persons, and it's this whole spectrum where people just can't help it, or they choose what they want to be along those lines. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. What I do know, not with any kind of certainty, but just my feeling, is that this Podesta leak is just highly unlikely. I can't imagine a scenario where this actually happened. I mean, I'm sure these people involved in the power structure use the same technology we do, the phones and everything, but the operating systems and the software and all of that is, when it comes to something like this, not even remotely close to what we use. Even if they have their own personal accounts away from that stuff, I'm sure there are so many contingencies in place so something precisely like this would never happen. You don't think they would give them training, classes, I mean, however you want to view it, just some kind of awareness about this stuff so they would never fall for it? And so I am forced to speculate that this entire Pizzagate narrative was crafted from the beginning, intended to be released. They created every little part of it, released it, and then it built into QAnon, which then built into the event at the US Capitol, which then is bringing us to present day. It's all one thing that, goes all the way back to the beginning of the term conspiracy theorist itself, right after the JFK assassination. This whole thing has been built slowly as the American empire has declined, because they are intertwined in that way. And the linchpin is 9/11, of course. What we know about Fancy Bear's hack team. After all that, the conclusion of the article, we don't actually know anything about them for sure. It's like a great piece of journalism here. But Fancy Bears have alluded to the fact that they are linked with Anonymous. And Anonymous is another one of these controlled opposition fake activist groups that is supposedly a group of hackers that are for the people, quote unquote. So you have Fancy Bears, the hacker organization that allegedly phished Podesta's login credentials, being associated with Anonymous. And this is another red flag where you say, oh, hold on a second. We know what Anonymous is. Now you have this Russian version of Anonymous that supposedly created Pizzagate. Very interesting, right? We're really starting to do our own chipping away here at the official narrative. And obviously the Pizzagate QAnon stuff built into the arrest of Epstein and Maxwell and the exposure of everything that was going on that island. And now there are all kinds of other public figures that are experiencing backlash from this, especially Bill Gates and people like that. And that's what I mean about being a pawn in certain ways. Like, they don't care what us regular people think about them, their fake persona that's out there for public consumption. Why would they care if it gets dragged through the mud and there's a stain on them now? I mean, I guess, do they supposedly care when they're sitting in their, billion-dollar mansions? I don't think they care at all about what we think. And that's what I mean about being a pawn in terms of your public persona. Like, it gets sacrificed as a part of these larger rituals, and that's just what you do. And your family's taken care of in perpetuity. Their website says, "We are anonymous, we are legion, we do not forgive, we do not forget, expect us." Anonymous. This is the Fancy Bears website. But nothing has been confirmed, and Anonymous haven't posted anything to confirm the links. Another interesting thing along these lines is This is just a random post from Hacker News. The earliest form of a QAnon-style narrative being advanced in the public was from Steve Pieczenik, who has a deep intelligence background, who was talking about a white hat coup on Alex Jones's show. Another source that glows in and of itself in 2015, a full year before the first Pizzagate drops. And this is talking about a QAnon-style narrative in terms of the political right, as it's generally portrayed. But that type of white hat coup narrative goes way back into the New Age stuff. People like David Wilcock and characters like that have been talking about this in the same way. Benjamin Fulford, for the people who have been doing this for a long time, you'll remember that name. They spread this kind of narrative, and then it was sort of subsumed within the intentional mainstreaming of conspiracy theories via QAnon and Donald Trump. And so that narrative kind of got pulled along into it, where they were now saying that, yes, the white hats are in charge. And indeed, the WikiLeaks exposure of these emails was a part of that. That's what Steve Pieczenik was saying on all those Alex Jones shows. And it just really explains everything. When you go to Pieczenik's Wikipedia page and see that he was Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under Kissinger, Cyrus Vance, and James Baker, later a consultant of the United States Department of State. All of that, yeah, sure. But when you go down here, as recently as October 6, 2012, Pieczenik was listed as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. However, sometime between October 6 and November 18, 2012, his name was removed from the CFR roster. So you have this guy with all these official credentials. He's a member of the CFR, and he's the one who's beginning the QAnon-style narrative on Alex Jones's show. And he was actually the one who started the Sandy Hook false flag stuff on Alex Jones's show as well. And then they later had some fake falling out, as far as I understand it. I'm not really sure what went down because I don't watch Alex Jones's show, but it's just very interesting to me that it's so out in the open. These characters that are on InfoWars giving you the truth. Oh, no, actually, he's a member of the CFR. This guy who's on the program all the time. And he is very involved in this Pizzagate QAnon narrative. And that's what I mean about it all being coordinated from the beginning, knowing that all of this would be intentionally released. Does that mean that every single part of it isn't real? No, that's what I'm saying. You have to really weed through it all and see where, okay, I can pinpoint this as a real thing. It's factually accurate. It happened. It's there. And then you have to look at the other stuff like, oh, well, how could that real thing be leveraged into a psyop? So anyways, if Pizzagate was totally coordinated from the beginning as a psyop, it's most likely the same case that the Epstein-Maxwell disclosure was the exact same thing. Meaning, they want people discussing this stuff. They want it spread around. And that would track with a lot of the assets and agents who are allowed to discuss those subjects and do so very openly. And then that gets to the question of why, the all-important why. Why would they do that? Why would they expose themselves like this? And I think this is one of those things that really gets you thinking along those lines. Like, really? Podesta was tricked into entering his credentials through a Gmail link? Really? I don't know about that. I don't know, man. That sounds a little fishy to me, speaking of phishing. And a lot of the Epstein stuff is similar, the way all of that information has come out and been promoted in a similar way. You can fill in the gaps however you want to. This is just the overarching structure intellectually that I'm looking at this through. And I think when you look at it like this, it really does raise some questions about why and how all of this came into being in the first place. Because in all of the discourse about it, because of things like Dutroux in Belgium, there is some kind of real aspect to all of this, which leads people to not even question the legitimacy of these emails and why they were allowed to come out. Everyone just assumes that, oh yeah, this was a hack. But was it? That's what I'm saying. Was it actually, or was it just said to be a hack, and they had all of this whipped up in advance and they released it intentionally? And then the next question is why? And I'll just leave you with that question. Why would they do this? It's something worthwhile to think about, and I would appreciate more minds thinking about that. Maybe you can fill me in on what you're thinking in the comments. But that's it for now. Later.